Thank you, Bucky, so much. And thank you for sharing your story with us. I'm wondering, Bucky, you mentioned we should take one step. What is that one step that you would like us to take? And when I think of us, you're talking about us as a community of people. What would that be?
Absolutely. We really have to stop. I would say the first step is with the chemical regulations, because there's so many things that are happening at this moment with, we speak with Ms. Cotter, who is doing such great work for our firemen and our first responders, and tremendous. And we're trying to see, how can we keep them safe, because they're keeping us safe. What is the first step? And I think it's regulation is stopping the manufacturing of the chemicals. That has to be our first step. We've been told that it has been stopped, but then a new chemical with the same molecular, compounds are being formed, and nothing is changing. And we're finding that same chemical in the water in other places. And seeing the map that Ms. Patterson showed is astounding. And you can look, all across the world, and you can see those same contamination sites. And it's frightening to be a human on Earth and have to understand that there's chemicals that I'm living with, not just drinking, not just bathing, but breathing in. So it has to, the first thing that you have to do is stop manufacturing it, because there are so many things that can go on after manufacturing. There's so many people that can be held responsible. I understand where we are with who's responsible for this happening with the firefighting foam. We're trying to protect people by putting out fires, but yet we're not. So there are things that we need to figure out, but we just have to take steps at a time.
Thank you so much. I'm going to open it up to the committee. If you would raise your hand, and I will call on you. Well, as the committee is formulating their questions, I'm going to throw a question out to the panel, and that is, one of the issues that this committee is examining is what would be a way. What are your ideas for medical monitoring, for testing? What would you envision as a path forward? To that. Thank you so much. We do have a hand up, but I'm going to give Rebecca or Bucky a chance to respond to that question if they would like to.
I can share a little bit about the VA. So as I mentioned, I personally receive all of my care at the VA. I am a service-connected disabled veteran myself, and I am Priority 1. So the VA does provide information on different exposures on their website. And so I took a look to see what they had for PFOS, and there was a very large highlighted block in the middle where they mentioned that the VA does not recommend blood testing for PFOS. And it made me wonder who their intended audience was for that statement, whether it was veterans to discourage them from asking their healthcare providers about testing, and or if they're directing the VA clinicians not to order these tests. Because really the VA, it's a ready-made population for doing tests. They do research all the time. And so for them to come out and say, no, we don't think it's good to do PFOS blood testing, it just really made me think a little bit about their reasons for that.
I think the biggest question that I get asked a lot is, where can I get my blood levels tested for C8? And it's a very egregious process, hard process, to get that done. And I don't know if there's a sentiment of, well, yes, you might be tested and you might have some. Now, what's the next step? I think that is something that we should be looking at as far as to understanding, do I need to be tested? Because we already understand that it's in our blood, mostly 99.9% of humans have it in their blood at this point. So what does it mean once I'm tested, and what do my levels mean? I think that's a lingering question in the mindset of everyone that has been made aware of this.
Thank you. Dr. Hoppen.
Thanks, and thanks everybody for your really interesting presentations. I think this question is mainly for Diane, Rebecca, though I'd be interested in Bucky's comments as well, is one thing we know about a blood test is it tells us about today, but people in occupational settings had exposures a long time ago, get diluted over time. And so there are ways we could start to think about exposure reconstruction. Like Diane, you were mentioning logging, use of turnout. And so Rebecca, are there situations where in some of the military settings where we have high probabilities of exposure, are there ways that without a blood test, because a blood test might not show past exposures well, that we could identify people who may have had historic exposures?
I think that, I mean, you know, ideally service members will be tested when they are being exposed to these substances. So the fact that they're now going to start blood testing for military firefighters is huge. That's great. So I think the occupational exposures, like those people that have those MOSs, those job descriptions where they are actually using these chemicals, you know, more frequently, that in terms of prioritizing, it would be good to prioritize them a little bit more. And of course, like and when you blood test, if you give blood testing for a veteran and they've been away from the military installation for a while, yes, understandably, it's difficult to connect that blood concentration to a particular site, but it's still one additional piece of information. Because sometimes what will happen is, for other military exposures, the VA will say, yes, there was this environmental contaminant, but there's no proof it actually made it into your body. So just having that additional, yes, you may have to still try to connect it to a particular location, but having that proof that it was in my body is important.
Thank you. Ned, did you have a question you wanted to add?
No, I was thinking we're getting close to time, but I do see Erin Haynes has her hand up, and maybe we'll take that last question.
Sounds good. Erin?
Thank you. Hello. I just didn't want to let this opportunity pass to thank you all for being so bold and brave and just going through the experiences that you have and sharing them with us. I did have one question. We've mostly talked about measuring exposure in adults, but I'd like to hear your thoughts on the families, the children, the children of firefighters, the children of people living near these industrial sites. I'd just like to hear your thoughts on having children also in the biomonitoring plans.
Ned, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thanks so much. I want to thank you, Celeste. That was a really nice moderating job and great questions from the committee and great answers. I want to also thank Bill and Rebecca and Diane, just really great work. And I realize you do this often. I'm not certain it gets any easier. And so we do respect your bravery and stepping up and helping the committee collect the information that I think we can use moving forward in coming up with our findings, conclusions, and recommendations.